Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to our webinar today, where we'll be talking about completing your HIPAA security risk assessment before the end of 2021. And I will say that our agenda today is for you to understand what your responsibilities are in order to do that. Was sort of the regulatory background and the requirement around doing the SRA and what triggers those responsibilities. The importance of HIPAA training in your organization, common mistakes and misunderstandings, myths and facts, those types of things. And then also, what do you actually need to do? So this is a big topic. There's a lot of risk associated with the security risk analysis, and as much as you are required to protect data within your organization as well as patient privacy, if we want to look at the rest of HIPAA, or one of the other parts of HIPAA. And so privacy and security are really your obligations. And in the event of a data breach, you bear a lot of responsibility. So enough of my speech making up front. Those of you who've joined our monthly webinars and been to UGM may know me from my presentations there. I don't feel comfortable talking about myself, so I'm just going to move past this slide. I'll just say that my name is Andy Riedel. I am a member of the regulatory affairs team here at NextGen and have been working with the good folks at HIPAA One for a number of years. I was one of the folks that helped bring them on as a partner here at NextGen several years ago, and they've been working closely with our clients and doing wonderful things. And I've known Bobby for the duration of that time, Bobby Siegmiller, who's the Senior Vice President of Business Development. He has 20 years of business experience selling enterprise solutions and developing partnerships like the one with NextGen. He's currently the Senior VP at HIPAA One at Enterprise Health, recent merger between HIPAA One and Enterprise Health. And prior to joining Enterprise, he served as a SaaS e-sign solution consultant for several Fortune 50 customers. So with that said, I'm going to actually turn it over to Bobby, who's going to be doing the bulk of the presentation today, as he's very able to do. And I think he wants to start you out with a, hold on one second. There you go, Bobby. And I think he wants to start you out with a poll question. Is that right, Bobby?
Before we do that, I want to make a couple comments and possibly snide remarks. It said Andy has 3 decades of experience. I would say it's about 3 centuries of experience. We worked with Andy a long time, actually since 2014 with NextGen. So it's been a wonderful partnership. We do their security risk analysis, and it's been fun to work with this organization, over the years. The other thing I want to make mention of our merger, a lot of you know us as HIPAA One. We speak at your UGM conferences when we could go to those, and there's a tear in my eye because I miss the days when the NextGen customers would come to the booth and they'd get the HIPAA One shirts, and we'd have a lot of fun talking about HIPAA compliance. And usually you don't hear HIPAA compliance and fun in the same sentence, but we try to make it a little bit more fun. A few housekeeping items and things worth mentioning. We are recording this webinar. We'll send a link out to those that missed this webinar, so you can watch it over your Christmas holiday if you'd like, with your families. It'd be very entertaining. The other thing is, if you have questions, feel free to answer or ask those in the chat area. We'll try to get to those as we can, and then hopefully we'll have a few minutes near the end to do that as well. Now, jumping to this slide, we always like to know who our audience is. Who are we speaking to? So if we can launch this poll right now, it gives us an idea of who you are, and we can cater the content directly to you. And it's interesting, over the years, sometimes we have a heavily EHR IT staff. Sometimes it's administrative. So designate somebody in the room that's going to jump in front of the computer and quickly answer the question, and then we'll display the results. Nobody's going to see who answered what, but you will be able to see the breakup of that. So let's close the poll and show those results. These are always interesting and keeps us on our toes real time. So I'm not seeing the results there, if those have been posted. There we go. All right, so we have 25%. Interesting. So we have mostly administrative and EHR team. Clinical staff is low, so 8%. We love you. But we'll focus the majority of our conversation toward administrative and EHRIT team. Now, we can also talk about, HIPAA compliance, data security, which we will cover a lot of those things in this presentation. So if you want to close the poll, I've got another very important question for you to ask. I know 2021, so if we can launch that second poll question, did you complete your security risk assessment in 2021? With COVID, I know everything's been put upside down and on its head. Answer honestly, you've been lassoed with Wonder Woman's lasso of truth. And again, we're not going to share this with any outside parties. So we're just curious to see who has completed their security risk analysis for 2021. And we're going to talk a little bit more about the why and whatnot. So
Bobby, while they're thinking about that, right, two things, right?
Yeah.
First of all, understand that we're not mining those answers. We're not interested in whether you did or you didn't, but we're interested in the percentages to see how you're all doing. And I think the other thing Bobby will mention is, even though it is getting late, it is not too late. And if you haven't
Absolutely.
done it, you absolutely need to do it. So with that in mind,
Excellent point.
let's see the poll.
So let's display those results, Vanna. I'm waiting and it's going to say, curious. Okay, so let's see. So 50%, I think that's a 50%. Is that what you're seeing, Andy? 30% have answered no. Mine's kind of over off to the side, so I can't really tell the real percentages. It looks like, it appears that about 80% have not completed their security risk analysis, and that's okay. We have what we're talking to you about today is very relevant and will help you get through that very quickly. So let's launch the next poll question, and then we're done with questions until the very end. Next question is, OCR knocks on your door today. Are you 100% confident you'd pass? And we're going to talk about the why we are confident, why we are not confident. We see a consistent response on this question in all of our webinars. And the idea here, once I share the results, let's actually just share the results of those that have responded now.
I would also say, Bobby, if somebody doesn't know what the OCR is, then they probably wouldn't want to say that they're 100% confident. And that's okay. And I don't say that to be cute, because a lot of people may not be aware that the Office of Civil Rights is the department within HHS, or the office within an HHS that enforces HIPAA.
Thank you. Let's load those results real quick and talk about this. So 7% are confident that they would pass an OCR audit. The big question that we're all scratching our head, why? Why is that? And we're going to talk why that is. We see a lot of our the clients we talk to before they're a client, they're not confident. We hear they didn't follow a framework. They're not sure what framework to follow, not sure what the requirements were. What did we miss? What do we know? What do we not know? They may have tried to do it internally with spreadsheets, and that is very hard to track and update. So, to Andy's point, the reason we do this, our entire goal is to take the burden and stress and lack of confidence off your shoulders and put it onto ours, so you don't have to worry about any of that. And we do guarantee 100% pass rate in responding to these audits. That's the benefit. This partnership with NextGen has been amazing. Again, I mentioned we do QSI and all properties, their security risk analysis for them. We know they're secure, but you as a covered entity and providers, you've got to do this annually, especially if you're participating in some of the meaningful use or MIPS programs. It's actually a requirement. And the best is you get pricing cheaper through NextGen than coming directly to HIPAA One. So there's a lot of benefits there. Let's close that poll, and we will get rocking and rolling on this. So what are your responsibilities? There's a lot to know about HIPAA compliance. And I am confident that when you were little children, boys and girls, you didn't say, when I grow up, I want to be a HIPAA security officer. I want to be in administration and in healthcare. It's very stressful, and there's a lot to know. But here's just a quick at a glance. Here's what some of your responsibilities are. You've got to conduct a regular security risk assessment. It has to be done every year. The reason you do that is it identifies gaps in compliance. What are the doors and windows that we're leaving open? That is the most critical. And once we know those doors and windows are left open, we can close them. It creates a remediation, or we call it a corrective action plan. So that corrective action plan is, and this is critical. If you don't hear anything else on this call, this is important. Doing your security risk analysis, that tells us where our gaps are. Putting a corrective action plan in place. Once we do those two things, we're now HIPAA compliant. And you're saying that's weird. I haven't done anything. I haven't implemented any policies. I identified I don't have a policy and procedure for worker sanctions. And the fact that you say we are going to do one by February 25th, we're going to have one completed, and we actually supply that document for you. But the fact that you know you don't have one and that you're going to do it on the 25th of February, as of December 1st, we are now compliant with that requirement. So it's kind of an interesting. HIPAA compliance is the one regulatory compliance that you can be out of compliance yet still be compliant at the same time. Super confusing, but those are the rules. You've got to develop policies and procedures. Make sure you're not just buying policy and procedure library off online. Keep them properly updated. We typically suggest every 3 years you got to have a refresh. And again, we supply that whole library to you, so there's no excuses there. Training your staff annually. I'm going to include that in the next comment here. You've got to document your efforts, to HIPAA compliance, produce them all in the event of an audit. Training your staff annually is a very critical piece, and we're going to talk about that here in a minute. And then the other one is documenting all the vendors who have access to patient data, PHI, protected health information. You've got to have those business associate agreements in place. What do they have access to? What are they doing with that information? Are they selling it? Are they sharing it with others? You've got to know where that patient data is coming and going. So we're going to talk a little bit about that here in a second. So let's start with the basics. Completing your annual security risk analysis. What it does, it is a foundational piece to your cybersecurity and HIPAA initiatives. It creates that roadmap. So we identify, as I mentioned before, here are the gaps, here's the holes in the boat, here are the windows and doors that are left open. We know we need to fix this lock, change this, window out, shut the garage door. I mean, once we know what those issues are, we can create that roadmap or that remediation or corrective action plan. And the most important thing is it's going to identify these risks, these vulnerabilities that could lead to a breach. That's the entire reason we're going through this exercise. You don't want to breach. You don't want to make the 6 o'clock news. You don't have to notice all your patients that you guys are not secure. It's not good for business, and it costs a lot of money, frankly. So there's some measures you can put in place to help prevent that type of an event in the future. And then it obviously gives you your ongoing updates, and you can review those on the fly. So I talked a little bit about this a couple slides ago, but barriers to completing a security risk analysis. Why don't people do it? What's the reasoning? It takes a lot of time. That's one of the excuses. And I have a slide at the very end of this deck that shows you exactly, based on your role, all of those questions. Who are you? Administrative IT, regardless who you are, I'll be able to tell you your 30 minutes to an hour, to do this, to go through this process and at least answer the questions. And then we can put that corrective action plan in place throughout the year. But we hear, it takes too long. It's an administrative burden, and I get that, but it's a requirement. A lot of the administrative burden comes because it's a manual process. You're using spreadsheets or you're emailing back and forth. It's hard to gather information and keep it in one location. Some organizations we see with some of our smaller clients, we've got about 8,000 client sites that use the HIPAA One software now. We've grown quite a bit in the last few years, but they lack internal resources. Some of these small critical access hospitals, FQHCs, single physician practices, it's the office manager that is doing the security risk analysis. The other spouse is the physician, and the brother-in-law is the IT guy. And I always say that as a joke, but it's true. We have thousands of clients that don't know what HIPAA is. They don't know how to spell HIPAA. It's 1 P, by the way, with 2 A's. And, lacking the resources is a big deal. We've put together a process, and we'll show you that here in a second, how you can very methodically go through this really easily, answer questions, and have it calculate your risk and produce a final report, regardless of whether you're an expert or not. So lack tracking and reporting, again, that's a big component. Spreadsheets just do not do it justice. And it's more of a collaborative approach through different individuals throughout the organization. Well, that last one I want to touch on, actually, increased complexity for organizations with multiple locations. We did a security risk analysis last December. This client waited. We engaged in October, but they didn't get everything signed and started until December 1st. we finished in 3 weeks, and they had about 340 locations. The only way we were able to do that is the software. We were able to pre-populate. These are some of the consistent answers relative to IT, HR, reporting. We were able to pre-fill those and then push them out to all the ancillary sites. And that helps tremendously. So we're not answering the same question over and over and over. So if you're one of those organizations that has multiple sites, which we have a lot of NextGen clients that do, that's an extremely beneficial piece of the software that I don't want to overlook. So let's ask this for the question, triggers. What are the triggers for performing a security risk analysis? When should I perform it? Well, if you are an organization that is participating in the MIPS program, it used to be part of the ACI score. And it was just like, if you don't do it, you get a 25% ding here, you don't get to count these points. Back in, I think it was January 119, it came out, they came out and said, this is a prerequisite to even participating in MIPS. It's not part of the ACI score anymore. It's a prerequisite. So you do need to attest, you need to check a box, and you want to make sure you're honest there, because if they ever come back on you, not a good thing. They'll ask for the incentive money back, and there's some fines. I'm not trying to scare you, but there's some fines associated with that. So make sure you're honest in your documentation of that. So that is a critical trigger, that MIPS deadline. And that deadline, just so we're clear for everybody on the call, meaningful use, it is a calendar year. It is December 31st. So unless you hate Christmas, I would recommend, if you haven't started it, start now. Start here in the next little bit. And it's super easy. You just reach out to your NextGen rep, or you can talk to us. We'll go through your organization, how many locations, EPHI systems, all of that. And then we'll throw you back to your NextGen rep, where you can sign up and get some discounted pricing and services if you need to help get through this fairly quickly. So December 31st, that's the other, if you're taking notes, make sure you write that down, because the clock will tick 12 and then turn into a pumpkin. So I'll go through these pretty quickly. The security risk assessment process we have in steps. The first is gathering information in the form of questions. We break it down into specific roles, and I'll show you that here in a little bit, but it's going to ask specific questions relative to that specific role. You answer those questions, and it calculates risk. It'll identify where the gaps are. Is that a high, medium, or low risk? And then it'll help you put a corrective action plan in place and build some reporting feature and functionality for you, so that you can navigate through this process very, very smoothly. So completing your risk analysis, step one. Step two is training all employees, new and existing. This is something that we see often gets overlooked. And sometimes we see it done via PowerPoint slides, and that's fine. Just make sure you're documenting, but you want to make sure you implement, some software or an elevated level of training that's relevant to your organization. Andy, I don't know what you're seeing with the clients you're speaking with relative to ransomware attacks, but we're seeing an increase, a barrage coming in. It used to be 20 to 30%. Now it's 30 to 50% are falling victim to these phishing attacks and ransomware attacks within the organization. So I don't know if you're seeing the same thing or not.
I mean, similar, and when we see it very often, you see it, since we're dealing with practices in the same demographic, right? And healthcare is certainly targeted. I don't think we spend any time really in the slides here with some of the data around that, but it's pretty overwhelming. There's an actual value for healthcare data, and a lot of the actors, we're calling them threat actors, that's the working name for them right now, are financially motivated and in many cases state sponsored. So recently we heard of a practice that was hacked by a Russian sponsored state sponsored threat actor, and fortunately the client was able to shut systems down prior to all of their data being encrypted. So they were fortunate. They kind of escaped the worst of it, but it still ended up being very expensive. And So I will say that, you know, in this particular case, it was not, well, it was ransomware, but it wasn't the typical, you have an employee who opens an email and clicks on something when they shouldn't. Very often, email is statistically one of the biggest entry points or threat vectors, we call them, right? In this particular case, it was a piece of hardware, a firewall that was due to be updated. The firmware was scheduled for an update, but there was a vulnerability, and this threat actor knew exactly what it was, and they were out there snooping IP addresses to find that find something, some organization with that piece of hardware. Um, that's how serious and how varied uh, the kind of threat landscape is. And so I've said enough. Bobby's got a lot to cover, but when you look at how thorough uh, the analysis is that you can do using HIPAA One and the way you can inventory all the various IT assets, uh, and look at some of the other information HIPAA One has provided about what should you do every month, what should you do every quarter, what should you do semi-annually, annually, because you really have to be constantly on guard across all of these different vulnerabilities or threat vectors.
Thank you, Andy. And you know, our we talked about this earlier. Our goal is not to scare you or say the boogeyman's coming. The reality is the boogeyman's here and he's under your bed. Boo. No, it's something that it's so frustrating because healthcare, people are putting their lives on the line. They're treating patients, and you've got these bad actors, as Andy's talking about. It's frustrating, but the attacks, the amount of attacks, the barrage of attacks, they're increasing year over year. And why? They're making money. Ransomware, it's being, you know, it's being paid, and there's a lot of, if we won't spend a lot of time here, but if you want to see what's out there, Google ransomware attacks in healthcare, and you'll see hundreds of, you know, or go to the OCR wall of shame. You see hundreds and hundreds of breach-related incidents. What happened? How it happened? Everyone is at risk, and as Andy mentioned, this data, our patient records, they're you know, worth money. I mean, they can sell them. There's fraudulent activities that they can do, you know, with that information. But one of the biggest things that I found, I spoke to a local CIO, largest health system here in our state, and I said, "What keeps you up at night? You know, what is it that scares you?" And he said, "It's my employees." He said, "We're the Fort Knox of security." I almost laugh because I tease him. I say, "You guys are like a security company that practices healthcare." And they're big. And he says our employees are our biggest risk. He says we find that we built this Fort Knox and they're holding the back door open. You know, during this time of year when we talk about the type of training that needs to be, you know, conducted, we're talking about you know, emails. You're going to start seeing a lot of Amazon emails that are targeted specifically in. Oh, I've got a package. You know, I actually do have a package. Let's click on that link and boom, you're toast. So you've got to train your employees on the most relevant attacks, how they're happening, and we've got training available, you know, for your employees. We put out a COVID training last year. I mean, talk about evil people, you know, preying on already disturbed industry with the COVID-19 situation that we had. So we built some COVID-19 training last year, pushed it out for free to all of our customers. They were able to get in and say, here's what you need to look out for. This is happening, and we're seeing an increase in these types of attacks based on this current situation. So anyway, the importance of HIPAA compliance training, the point behind it is it reduces the likelihood. When we're aware, don't click on this, you know, you're more sharp. We're even finding spear phishing attacks. I get them from the CEO asking me to buy gift cards, you know, for employees. And they usually say kindly. If you see the word kindly in an email, it's not the way we speak, you know, you know, so look for cues like that when emails come in. Educate your, you know, employees, also your business associates, on the potential risks and safeguards that are required.
Hey, Bobby, I'm just going to add one
Yeah.
thing, right? Like I used to, because any organization that is on top of this, especially a larger organization, does fake spear phishing, right? In other words, we're
Hmm.
trying to make employees aware and say, "Hey, got you," and then give
Hmm.
some education, right? Not to penalize anybody. And I used to have fun with it because we get them, and I would send them over to our chief security officer and say, "Haha, nice try." But I will say that things like the tip off you used, the word kindly, misspellings. It used to be pretty easy, and still is sometimes, to spot a spear phishing effort. But I will say the threat actors behind these are becoming more sophisticated
Yeah.
and more polished as time goes on. So that's just sort of the natural evolution of things, right? And we'll get to a point where they become fairly unrecognizable. So you really, need to invest some time or think about which employees access which systems, how email is used, is email kept on a separate network, and so on. So these are some of the things you really need to look at.
Oh, I agree. I have fallen for the Nigerian princess scam 3 times, sent my
Really?
money, and yeah, totally fake.
Well, it was
There's no
me the last time, you know that.
Yeah. No, but Andy, to your point, I got one just this week. It was a Microsoft Office update, and I literally had just updated, so it was kind of interesting. But as I looked, the email looked beautiful, looked like it was from Microsoft. Even the way they masked the heading, it said Microsoft. But when you click on that, look at the sender. Be suspicious. Click on that sender, and if you see a weird email, forward it to your IT staff and say, "I got this. Is this weird?" Back in the day, we used to go on site and drop thumb drives and or send out a keyboard. You just want a free keyboard, and people be like, "Sweet, plug it in." Boom, before you know it, we've got a keylogger, we've got all their passwords. The thumb drives, when they plug in, congratulations, you just qualified for 2 hours of HIPAA compliance training. Don't do that again. There's things that we used to do in the olden days that don't apply now. A lot of it is electronic attacks. It's easier through email then because of the way security has been implemented with some of these large organizations. Again, they are Fort Knox, to Andy's point, but the employees, that's one of the things that we've got to make sure that the new employees onboarding and the existing employees are trained relevant to their role. And I'll talk about that here right now. What are the topics that they're covering? We want to make sure it's workforce specific. Providers, we have very quick uh, training that goes through. They see patients. Here's what you need to know. Billers, it's going to be something different. IT staff, totally different. And then depending on if they're a health plan, they're a business associate, depends on who they are. We want to make sure that training, that workforce training, is specific to the role and what they can do. And again, tons of breaches. Kim Kardashian, if you remember the Cedars-Sinai issue where the MAs were logging in under the doctor's password, they were sharing passwords, and that was not a good situation. When they were able to identify several people logging in, they got fired. But we don't want to share passwords. We want to make sure we're training on specific roles. You can't just get in the system and look up brother-in-law, old girlfriends, boyfriends, things like that. Not allowed. Those are all HIPAA violations. You want to make sure training is short and sweet. The days of several hours of training, let's just keep it relevant, short and sweet, to the point. And then we want to make sure that you document. You've got to have a certificate. If it's a PowerPoint that you're doing, if you're doing it the old-fashioned way, that's fine. Make sure everybody signs a sign-in sheet. You scan it, you upload it, you certify that. That you track it, because we have seen in several instances clients get audited. First thing they ask for, give me your security risk analysis report. Second thing they ask for, show me your policies and procedures. Third thing, show me proof of HIPAA compliance training, as funny as that sounds. So make sure you're documenting and tracking that if you're doing it on your own. If you're using, we have software, you can use ours, and we've got a library of different types of training. You even have the ability to customize your training, put your own logo and say, this is relevant to us as an organization, and create your custom quizzes, final exam, see the results, all those things and more. Steps, let's see, let's hit implement tools to protect your office. So what are they? We've talked about getting your risk analysis done. And it sounds like the majority on this call need to get it done, and maybe you have it scheduled. And that was an unfair question we asked. A lot of you hadn't done it. Maybe it's on the docket to do here in the next couple of weeks. We've covered training. Now, what tools can we implement? Business associate agreement should be at the top of the list. I would ask the question to everybody here, and if you can't answer in the affirmative, you've got some work to do on this subject. Do you have a location that you can go to and produce all your business associates? Or are they in 300 emails that have come through and you tried to track it on a spreadsheet and some may be up to date, some are not? Do you know if they've done their security risk analysis? If you think about Bismatics, there was a breach. They were a smaller EHR vendor, had a breach, and providers came in on Monday and said, awesome, we've got to now notice all our patients that there was a breach. It was no fault of our own. It was through our business associate. Know and understand the downstream dependency. If there's a breach through your business associate, you are liable to report. Now, fortunately, NextGen they do a phenomenal job. We know their IT staff. We know the measures that they have in place. They're secure. You need to focus on your other business associates that may not be. And it's interesting, we do have a BAA tool. If you're a HIPAA One user, you've got a free BAA tool available to you that will track, do all the things that you need that software to do. It's automated task reminders. You've got bulk upload. You can take all your vendors, load them into the software. It provides electronic signatures. And if you need to upload your business associate that's proprietary or personalized to your organization, do that. If you want to use ours, use ours. You need to use your clients, not a big deal. The message is all of your information is in one location. And again, it's included with your HIPAA security risk analysis, software subscription. So it's a nice thing to use. And it's interesting as we ask for proof of compliance through these business associates of yours, it's kind of funny what they upload. We see here's a HIPAA compliance certificate uploaded as their security risk analysis. And we have to say, awesome, thank you for training your people. Not really what we were looking for. You need to do a security risk analysis. It's a requirement. In 2013, the final omnibus rule came out requiring all business associates. And I think at that time there was about 4 to 6 million business associates. There's probably a lot more now, but all of those who transmit, store, view protected health information are required to do the same thing you are as an organization. But it is your responsibility to make sure that they're covered. So what's the moral of the story here? All this talky, what does it mean? Find out, A, do we have all our business associates in one location? If you don't, you've got a little bit of work to do. Second, have they performed a security risk analysis? If not, they need to do one. And what do they access? What do they do with that information that they have access to? That's very important to understand and make sure those are up to date. So final is review and update policies and procedures. So this is key. Policies and procedures, I typically say avoid downloading those big libraries online. They're costly, and you're implementing policies and procedures that may not be relevant to your organization. So we have a policy and procedure library that's relevant that you can use. But what they do, it's a way to show your organization's intent. Here's the policy, here's what you need to do, and you put that in writing. Here's the behaviors, here's the procedure, here's the company's processes relative to if you break that policy or if you keep it. Had a question come in. It says, what kind of time limit is there to get HIPAA training on a new employee?
Yeah, I was just about to type an answer. So we will shy away from giving legal advice. As I understand it personally, and I'll emphasize personally, the rule is not that specific. But generally, what we tend to see is that organizations will do it at the time of new employee onboarding, and then on a recurring annual basis for all employees around the same time every year. So, but that's just what we've seen. That's not legal advice.
Okay, and here I'll give you legal advice. Soon. What is soon? No.
Soon.
How's
Yeah.
that for politicians?
Yeah, as soon as possible. Right. So if you've onboarded so in all seriousness, if you've onboarded a new employee and haven't done it yet, you would probably be wise to do it as soon as you can.
No, and Don, I would say that's a really good question. I met with the OCR at HIMSS a couple of years ago, and asked them a different question. I said, how long does HIPAA compliance training need to be? You don't have guidance on that. What needs to be trained on? And their response to me was, look, we don't get that granular. They just want to make sure you are training your employees and that it is done annually. So the content, we kind of have an internal debate with our compliance officer on what the content should be. But do you need to know that HIPAA was enacted in 1996 through Clinton and and Congress? I mean, do we really need to know that? What is relevant to the organization? What kind of attacks are coming? That's the training that I am suggesting. And then also patient privacy information. If it's a new employee, my suggestion would be get it done soon. You do not want a new employee logging in and looking up, friends, family, exes. Like I said, that is considered a breach. You want to make sure they know their swim lane. This is your swim lane. You need to stay in it, and you don't have access to these, other things. There's a lot more that goes into onboarding, but that's a great question. So let's see. Let me jump back in, and I will go to the next slide. So policies and procedures. This is an interesting one. You want to create these policies and procedures in the software. You'll actually, it'll ask you a question. Do you have a PMP for this particular thing? If you say yes, and keep in mind, you need to have it updated within the last 3 years. If you say, yes, we do, it's going to say, prove it, upload yours. If you say, no, we don't, not a big deal, we'll produce the policy and procedure, and you'll see that on the right-hand side. What's interesting is we'll log into the client's account as auditors and help, we provide assistance in reviewing some of the stuff, but we'll see policy XXX, effective date MMYY, and we have to call them and say, seriously, could you not fill in approval date? Who approved it by the board? What was the policy number? Make up a number, 1, 2, 3. But you do have a little bit of work to do, 1%. We've created the 99%, but make sure those are updated with that information at the top if you're using our policies, because you will get called on the carpet. We're the friendly auditor. The OCR, some of these other auditors may not be as kind as they go through that, and it can be up to $50,000 per infraction or per HIPAA violation. So you want to make sure you are tight on this area. But they do need to be created and approved by authorized individuals. Sometimes it's a board, and then implement those, in the training that you do. Hey, here's a new policy. Here's what you need to know. Document all of that information. That's what's critical. All right, we are really close to being done, so hang in there. We're going to talk about using HIPAA One to complete your security risk analysis. And I wish I had a poll question. How many of you use the software? We have absolutely loved working with the NextGen user base over the years, your unique challenges and issues. And I will say, based on the number of NextGen clients we have, I would say we have not encountered anything we couldn't tackle. And I would say we have somebody from every industry in every situation. So you've got a lot of people that have blazed the trail before you since 2014. Step one, we already talked about this, is gathering information. I've got to understand, these few roles, HR questions. We've got IT network and service questions. IT questions are about 30% of your assessment, just so you know the time frame involved there. HIPAA security officer is a little bit longer. And then facilities manager, we've got a couple of questions, about where servers are stored, are they hosted, those types of things. So these roles right here, this is, and I love that they're Christmas colors, perfect timing. Those are our real colors, but very seasonal. Love that. So HR questions, you can see in green, this represents how far the individual is relative to answering the question. Green means you're completed, green is go. Red, it shows you this one is 19% complete, 38% complete, 75, and naughty HIPAA security officer has not even started. They will not be getting any gifts this year. You also notice these little flags here. If you have questions as you're going through the process, I don't understand what this means, boom, flag it. And we log in and we can see that and then set up a call to help hold your hand through that process. And every one of these roles may be flagged. Some of our clients actually have that. But the message is this gives you in one dashboard all that you need to know and how far the group as an aggregated group is navigating through this process. Let's go next slide here. this is jumping into one of the actual questions. And I don't know if you can see my mouse here, but you see the category, the specification, and the HIPAA citation there. We also map it to NIST citations as well. That might be a different language to some of you, but those that understand what I'm talking about, it's a very beneficial thing to have those mapped. But you have the option. It's like TurboTax. Does the organization have a policy and procedure for worker sanctions? Yes or no? And some you'll see not reasonable and appropriate. So let's go through. I'm going to answer yes, I do have this policy. Now it'll pop up this little dialog box that says, great, basically prove it. Upload your policy and procedure, and it has to have been updated within the last 3 years. And obviously you got to have the approved by, effective date, all that fun stuff. If you answer no, that dialog box is gone. You get a new dialog box. Not a big deal. Click here. There is your policy. So that is the yes or no process. And then sometimes it's not reasonable and appropriate for your circumstance. If you're a biller, you don't see patients, you may be able to say not reasonable and appropriate. It's not that it's not applicable, but it doesn't apply in the way of, how we do our business. So you put the notes in there, document it, move on. So there's the not reasonable and appropriate, and then provide an explanation. So that is step one, gathering all of the information needed. Step two is where we put a corrective action plan or remediation plan in place. So that is step two here. And remediation plan, I was going to say it's kind of fun, but that's probably a sick and twisted term for working with HIPAA compliance items that need to be remediated. But it is kind of nice. We calculate the risk. There you go. There's the threat. We map it to the threat, the vulnerability. All of that's done for you. You don't have to go through this big spreadsheet and document that. You put in compensating controls, and then this is where the magic happens. There's two things I want to point out here. One, I can assign this individual this particular risk. So this is key. Assign the individual, all I need is their name and email address, and then I select a target date. And if this was not a PowerPoint, I'd be able to click on the target date, it'd pull up a calendar, and I could say, we're going to have this done by March 9th. This action plan tells you exactly what you need to do. It's going to say assign the role of HIPAA security officer, blah, blah, blah. I can modify, I can edit, change. Some of our larger clients will add to some of our text. Some of the smaller clients leave it as is. But once I select this date, it creates what I call the auto harass feature. So it's going to continue to ping them and say, hey, Judy, Dawn, get on this. You've got 3 high-risk items that need to be completed. Get on it. So that's the advantage of utilizing a software as opposed to spreadsheets. Is you've got these reminders. Everybody's helping. Many hands make light work. My dad taught me that when I was a child. So, and this is a true statement. Step 3. So step 1, step 2, we've asked the questions, we put a corrective action plan in place, and now it will produce a final report for us. And that report, it can be 50 to 150 pages, depending on the information that we put in there. A couple things that are relevant to point out on this dashboard. You can't get to this dashboard until you do the first 2 pieces, which are answer questions and put the corrective action plan in place. And then it's going to show you current risk status, what's high, medium, and low, what's unaddressed, open, and resolved. It's also going to show risks that have been updated over time. We did 2 in November. We took the month of December off for the holidays. We started with another one in January, took another break till July. So this is going to track how often you update and what you update, and then it gives you a letter grade. So this is a key piece, only visible to your eyes only. So nobody's going to see that letter grade, but it's kind of nice to see that as you go. So I'm seeing a couple of questions, lots of
Hey,
questions.
so Bobby, yeah, so
Yeah,
I'll help you queue those up. So
thank you.
one thing is, you'll recall that back several years ago when we first met, my kind of thing was like, you know, well, they say in the music business, right? Don't bore us, get to the chorus, right? So like I wanted to see, let me see the report. What is it? How does this all end up? Because if it doesn't do that, goodbye. Because a lot of people showed us software and it was like, come on. So this really blew our minds at the time, and I still think it's really the distinguishing factor. Like having everything very easily organized, PDF it, file it, or if you want, print it out and bind it, whatever makes you feel good. but you've got something, and this cues up the question that we got about what does the OCR prefer? Do they like to see you engage with a company like HIPAA One? So my answer in the chat was OCR is pretty silent on what they want to see, right? Other than you
I
meeting the requirements. But you have experience, I know, with OCR auditors who've
Oh,
seen.
yes, we do. And matter of fact, Megan, you're the winner of a HIPAA One shirt. So you just need to email info@HIPAA One, tell us shirt size, and we'll send you a really, for reals, a fun HIPAA One shirt with our logo, Pat. I'll introduce you here in a minute to Pat. You asked the question OCR. So they are asking for specific things. I have spoken to them many times. They know very well who HIPAA One is. We are the only organization that I know of that has a 100% pass rate from the OCR. And there's also other auditing bodies. In the beginning, it was Figliozzi. They won the contract. So their accounting firm won the contract to do audits. And there was the random audits and a lot of different audits that were taking place. OCR will come knocking on their door or on your door if there's a breach related incident, but they're asking for specific things. There are actually rules and guidelines and things that you need to produce. So our final report that we produce, we hand over to them. And this is something you do not pay for. If you have somebody from the OCR knocking on your door, and I always get in the debate with the attorney on this, and I love arguing with attorneys. I say, I want to be your first call. And they say, no, we would like to be the first call because we're legal. And I say, yeah, but I know more than you. So we have 100% pass rate, but fine, call your attorney first, but then call us really quick. We know what they're looking for. Let us respond, and you don't pay for that service. And what a beautiful insurance policy to know that if you're getting audited, that we can help you navigate this process with poise and pass your audit. We have a 100% pass rate. If you're our first failed audit, we're going to be frustrated because we've got a nice track record since 2000. I think it was 2011 or 2012 that we started this business, never failing an audit. And again, the key is we know what they're looking for. They know who we are, and it's almost like a rubber stamp when that goes across there. So hopefully that answered your question. And then there was another one. Oh, I missed another question here. Does this tool carry the information forward year to year? So that's where you get the shirt, Megan. I'm going to talk about that here in a minute. So just hold on to that question. What happens to all the information? As you go through the security risk analysis process, we do all this. That is when the magic happens, is year two. And we can carry all the information from last year and populate your new assessment for year two. What that does is saves you about 80% of the time you would normally year one. So all of the information, all your policies, procedures, how you answered the questions. It doesn't matter if, Janie retired from as the HIPAA security officer, you got a new officer in that just started, they would pull it up. All the questions would already be answered. And then you just need to go through and say, yep, that's still the same. Yep, still the same. And it takes you a few minutes to do so. So excellent question. This is a very, very small screenshot of that final report. You can generate those reports anytime you'd like. And I'm going to go back a couple of slides right to there. You can see view report. If I were to click on that and we were live in the software, close your eyes. I'm going to fast forward a couple of slides. Boom, I clicked on it, and this is what would open up. It's got this table of content. It goes through the methodology we use, the process, all the risks, the graphs. It takes you about a nanosecond to produce this document. It's perfect every time. It's got this active table of contents that I can click on, and it'll go to specific areas of the report. So our clients say, we love this piece because we don't have to write it on our own. This is the question I get 100% of the time. How long is it going to take me to do this? How long? Well, here it is. If you're HR, we need 30 minutes of your time. IT network and server, this is about 30%, as I mentioned earlier, of the security risk analysis. Facilities manager, about 30%. There's just a handful of questions. Boom, HIPAA security officer. You got a little bit of work to do, about an hour and a half. Now, it's not an hour and a half in one sitting. For those of us with ADD, you can answer 20 minutes today, another 30 minutes tomorrow, another, it will take you back to the place that you finished or left off, and you can start up at that appropriate location. So that is the general overview. Now, depending on how large the organization is, your 5,000 employees, add another 10 minutes for every 1,000 employees. The bottom line, this is not going to take you weeks and weeks and months to answer these questions. We've taken, I always liken this to the HIPAA security officer is leading the orchestra, or the office administrator. You're not playing all the instruments. You're just leading that. Everybody has their little part that they will
Yeah.
contribute.
Hey, Bobby, and nobody's going to believe when I say that we didn't rehearse that, because I had no idea you were going to make that reference. But I I do want to say this much: similar to an orchestral performance, the times that you have listed on the previous slide, consider that the time that it takes to do your performance, but all of the practice and hard work that leads up to that is really important. It's not going to take you 90 minutes to make sure that you're compliant. It's going to take you all year, right? I mean,
Absolutely.
there's so much work to do, and it's not something that you can it's nice that this process will help you identify where you need to do your work and where you need to do your remediation, and where your gaps are. Uh, but 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 security is a culture, and it has to be really woven into the fabric of everything you do. So that's my little soapbox on that. I also will mention that one other thing about the report is, and because we did get the question in the text, um, the report carries over to next year, correct? So you can pick up
Yes,
where you left off. Good.
absolutely. And to Andy's point, what we're showing you, this is to answer the questions again. What we hear is this process without software is largely unmanageable. It's hard. The spreadsheets, anyone that has gone through this process goes, oh, I'd rather watch paint dry, than go through a security risk analysis. The first part of it, answering the questions, goes very quickly, and then you spread out the remediation, as Andy mentioned, throughout the year. I think we talked about that. I can put a high risk item off till February, and then another one in March, and another one in July. As long as we have that corrective action plan or remediation plan in place, we're HIPAA compliant, even though you haven't done anything. So you will have work ahead of you. But the nice thing is if it was a policy and procedure related risk, to produce that risk, we're going to give you the documentation, and you just need to get it in front of the board. Hey, here's 5 documents that need to be approved and dated and signed, but they don't have to be done at the time you're answering those questions. That's where a lot of our clients are a little confused. They think, oh man, we got to remediate this stuff as we go. We're actually advising you, please don't remediate as you go. Answer the questions honestly, put your corrective action plan in place, and you're now good. And then work on those items as you have time, or following the dates. We've got just a couple more slides here. I'll just from a high level, mention the different type of assessments. We've got a self-assessment, facilitated remote, or a validated. The difference between these, self-assessment is just that. Here's a license to the software. There's a kickoff call, some tutorial. You've got some support from our assessor, but you're completing and signing off on the assessment. Most of our clients start year one doing a facilitated, where we're holding your hand through the process, answering questions, consistent meetings, time frame, and then we sign off on the final report. This validated is a lot more in depth. Sometimes these include on site. We'll do a physical walkthrough, an executive presentation, so a little more in depth. But those are the types of options available. Couple things that, well, let's load this poll question. We've talked about a lot of things today. If you're interested in having somebody reach out about HIPAA compliance training software, business associate tool, the security risk analysis, just say, hey, how much is it? Just curious. There's no commitment, and you won't get any pressure from our sales team. We used to have all of those things listed here. What are you interested in? And we could call you specifically on those, but we're not. This is through NextGen, and so we want to make sure that we're not gathering information that may not be appropriate or that you don't feel comfortable. So if you'd like us to call you, click A. If you're not interested, not a big deal. You're here for compliance credit, certification, click C. No, thank you. So we're not going to display the results on this one, obviously. So we'll close the poll here in a minute. Let's leave that up for a second. And I don't know if it's showing the next slide here. Pat is my favorite mascot. those of you that have been to the show, this seems to be a pretty big hit with the folks at the show, the T-shirts, and maybe we're part of the reason that you spell HIPAA wrong because we use a hippo. But let me just make a point here. So PAT stands for something very important. If you're writing this down, physical, administrative, and technical safeguards. Those are the things that you're required to stay on top of as a practice, as an organization. Doesn't matter who you are. We try to give a mnemonic device that can help you remember. But again, remember PAT, physical, administrative, technical. These are safeguards. Again, you have to do every year, and this brings a little light and fun. The other thing is, I wanted this slide here. I mentioned this a little earlier. Unless you hate Christmas, start now, because if you start on the 20th, you're not going to see Christmas. And this is our busy season. We've got, as I mentioned, about 8,000 client sites. We do this year in and year out. There's no way we could do this without this amazing software. It automates so much of the process. And year two, for any of our clients on the call that have used this, it's click that magic button, have everything import over. Saves you about 80% of the time, and it's a beautiful thing there. So that is key. The other thing I wanted to mention is we have a partnership. You've seen this Enterprise Health plus HIPAA One. I didn't have a chance to talk about that a lot, but Enterprise Health, we've merged with them. They bring so much to the table in the way of high trust assessments that are primarily on the business associate side. We have a NIST framework tool that has just been developed that's available to you in addition, to the security risk analysis, privacy risk analysis, breach notification. We've got HIPAA compliance training. They can also help with third-party risk management and also a lot of security advisory services. So they brought so much in the way of a deep bench of auditors to help with any of your needs. So bottom line, if you have any questions, reach out to us, and we can, there's our legal notice that you'll get as part of this slide. I am not going to read that. Sorry, attorneys. But if you do have any questions, you want to email us directly or reach out to, Enterprise Health. You can log on to HIPAA1.com as well. Those of you that have used us year over year, the message here is do something. You've got to adopt a framework. If you adopt any framework, this is the new laws that have come out. If you adopt any framework, leniency is going to be provided. And this is something, as I mentioned, is new this year, has not been in the past. It's almost felt like, wow, this is a revenue source for the government. Let's go find all of those in healthcare on top of all the, that they're doing. Let's stick it to them. If you adopt a framework, there will be leniency in the event of a breach. So I would leave with that.
Yeah, but just even like the fine structure, right? Like if you look at the structure of OCR fines, the steepest fines are for those who showed willful negligence, right? So having a program following a framework, sometimes breaches will happen and you could do everything right and it could still happen. So it's important to make sure that you're protected from the most, serious fines and penalties. Hey,
Absolutely.
just a quick word here, Bobby, before we sign off. Certainly feel free to reach out to your NextGen account representative. HIPAA One is a partner. If you want to reach out and speak to Bobby personally, which is always a lot of fun, just make sure you let him know you're a NextGen client so you can get the preferred pricing and get you over to your account manager to write up the SOF. Anything else in closing, Bobby, from you?
No, thank you. It's always this is always fun. Andy and I have spoken for many years at the UGMs. We've both shared that we've missed that. It's been fun to get together and chat with them. If you do have any questions, reach out to, like Andy said, your sales rep. They can point you in the right direction, or if you want to go first line through us, again, we have special discounted pricing, and there's a lot of tools that we can give you that don't cost anything, that'll help you automate some of your processes just to help out. So reach out to us and let us know how we can help you. So thank you. Have a good holiday, and do not procrastinate.
Yeah, thank you, Bobby, very much, and the rest of the HIPAA One team and the NextGen marketing team, and to all of our clients who joined us today. If we don't talk to you before the end of the year, do have a wonderful holiday, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye bye.